Welcome. I'm Mayor Gary Sulz, and with me today is Evan Parliament, Chief Administration Officer for the City of Revelstoke. Today, Evan and I are discussing the Revelstoke Affordable Housing Summit that was held last night at the Community Centre. We had a great turnout in person and online for this event, and excellent speakers joined us from Whistler, Banff, Tofino, Canmore, Sun Peak, Sicamous, and here in Revelstoke. Evan, what was your main takeaway from this summit?
Well, first of all, I would have to say the participation of the community, seeing almost a packed house in that room. We'd set out 120 chairs.
Right.
And I did a quick count. I think we had over 100, 110 that came out. Plus we had close to 160, 180 online. So when you look at 300 people coming in to discuss an important issue like affordable housing, I was very, very impressed that not only did Revelstoke participate, but all the other municipalities came together.
Yeah, it was great. And so, Evan, for me, this whole project kind of started last September when you and I and former Councillor Charlotte toured the Whistler Housing Authority, and Marla gave us a tour of what they had done. And then you just ran with this. So I'm just really appreciative. But let's talk a little bit about that, because I think you came to me, 8 or 10 days ago and said, "Hey, Gary, I want to do this." And, my response was, run with it. And look what happened, how well it turned out. And so we've started something that's moving forward. You don't go backwards from this. We've started something really, in my mind, province-wide, as far as conversation as to what to do. So we'll be able to move some things forward. Others will be able to move some things forward. Any comment on that?
Yeah. No, listen, I think local government now has to deal with this issue and has to get in the game. I started off in the 1980s, where water and sewer and roads and recreation and basic core services of local government was already established. The province dealt with housing, the province dealt with healthcare and education.
Right.
It's now 2023. What I was impressed with Whistler is they had a crisis. And Whistler, the community, created this authority and said, we're going to do something. And yes, you could argue that it's a provincial responsibility, housing. But in a local community, housing is a local initiative. And so Whistler took the drive. I don't think Revelstoke's any different, nor should we be. We need to be champions of this and partner with our stakeholders and work with this local society and get units built. And so I think local government needs to take that. And if there's any example of successes, we heard it last night.
Right.
Tofino took that role. Whistler has taken that role. Banff has taken that role. You heard over and over last night that we're a consortium of the municipality. We're a partner of the municipality. And that's what Revelstoke should be doing, and we're doing it. And local government has changed. So we have to fight for our hospitals, fight for our schools, and provide housing for our citizens. We have no choice.
Yeah, and I was asked about a comment made by Banff, where they have that limited 4 square mile zone that they can actually build, and talking about going up and rebuilding parts of the community. And I think we're working on that now, where we're talking about infill for housing. Some of the older properties are being renovated, that sort of thing. And so, the question that was posed to me was about our downtown core and how do we see that sort of thing. And I gave an example of, let's talk about my building being one of the older buildings in the community. If that were ever to be, if there was ever a redevelopment of a piece of property, it could be similar to what Arvid and Connie did across the street here with their building when it was burned out, where you put retail on the bottom and then housing above. Those sorts of things our community is willing to look at and move forward. So we're not going to take anything off the table as far as a proposal coming forward, but really getting things done. So we talked about our land inventory, our housing. The takeaway for me last night was, even if you have the land, doesn't mean that you're going to be able to put this forward if you don't have the funding, if we don't have a way to say, hey, this is how we're going to perpetuate this movement forward.
Right.
So for me, That was kind of a knock on my head saying, well, okay, you have to understand, you've got the land. How are we going to actually get developers to help us move this forward? And that's how we work, that public partner, private partner.
Yes, yeah. So further to that, there are two things that kill development, whether it's for affordable housing or for-profit housing or any development. The two killers are uncertainty and time.
Right.
And what local government can do is remove those barriers, provide certainty, and commit that we're going to get a project done like CP has done.
Right.
Like there's a perfect example. They were focused, they were committed, and they got it done. And yes, CP is a massive institution and they've got more capacity than our small community. However, if local government can remove that uncertainty and that time barrier and provide the developer or the stakeholder or the non-for-profit that guarantee that we're there, it is more than just land. But if we can address those two things, in addition to land, Gary, we will get units built in Revelstoke. I believe, listening last night to some of the locals, we have the talent right here to get this done. But our job is to remove that uncertainty, and that's about the approval process. Uncertainty is about, well, we have to have another committee meeting to discuss it. That just takes more time, and those kill any progressive development. So that's our job. So I took that last night, that we need to do more than just land. And that's a commitment, I think, all of our staff and this council, by making affordable housing the #1 priority, that's going to be our attention.
And I think that's key. And I appreciate those comments because really, you've heard me say many times is how do we get to yes? Where do we do the action items? Having another meeting for meeting's sake really drives me crazy, drives you crazy. We look at that and go, okay, so how do we perpetuate that forward? And so giving that information to the community where we will move forward. We heard from a contractor last night. You asked him, how do we do? He talks about the same thing that you're talking about now. It's like, let's get rid of the red tape. Let's move things forward. And I think that's where we're working. That's where we're going.
We can. And so again, I go back to what I think is a stellar development, and I'm very impressed in what CP has done. But I shared the figures last night. $15 million, 48 units, $300,000 a door. The city of Revelstoke is going to have a very interesting report come before council where the staff are going to recommend that the following parcels be considered surplus lands to be released to our partners like the society or others for redevelopment. There is no reason we can't do what CP has done. We control the regulation, we control zoning. The city can relax a lot of things so we can put units on the market. And we can do exactly what CP has done, just on a smaller scale, because we are in the regulatory business. We are in the zoning business, and we can eliminate the red tape. But it's a commitment, and we have to walk the walk instead of just talking about it.
Perfect. And that's kind of where I wanted to go with this conversation, so that the community hears what we're saying and we're committing to getting this done. You heard my comment last night. We need units built now. We need to work on this now. I think now is the time to put this forward. And you've made that commitment to our community by starting with this summit, and we'll move forward. I talked to someone about, us having something for our own staff. And an example would be 16 units that CP did. We could fill that immediately with our own staff. But all of our other businesses in our community are looking for the same sort of thing. So I know that there's some projects that are kind of in the works that other people are talking about, which is great. But now is the time for us to take away that red tape so all of these things can be moved forward.
I guess I can say in closing, when things are running like a machine and the economy is healthy and we've got applications upon applications before us for development approval, you do take your time because you want quality development. But we're in a crisis.
Right.
So you have to almost take that thinking, move it aside. We will deal with the other applications accordingly, and there's due process. But in a crisis, you got to throw some of that stuff out the window and say, okay, we got to act.
Right.
There's a piece of dirt. There's our partners. Let's bring in CMHC. Let's bring in BC Housing. Let's steal some best practices from other communities, and let's act. Because you have to throw that conventional thinking and the bureaucracy of local government, which I've been involved in a long time. You got to throw that out the window and act. It's like saving a school, Gary. It's like saving a hospital. We don't have the luxury, if IHA example were to announce that they're shutting down the hospital in town. We have to act. We can't use conventional thinking to solve that problem, or closing down a school. That's how I equate this issue with affordable housing. We have to be creative and throw out conventional wisdom.
Great. Appreciate that, because thinking outside that box is really what's going to spur us on. Thank you, Evan. I appreciate your time. I'm really looking forward to us to continue this conversation, but actually getting stuff done when it comes to affordable and attainable housing. I just really am happy about this. And really, for those of you who are behind and haven't had the opportunity to join us in person, I'm just going to encourage you. You can watch the recorded version on the city's YouTube account. And I just want to say thanks again for listening in. Be sure to take a few minutes to watch our other videos on the city Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram accounts. Thank you.
Thank you.